Tell me if this sounds familiar. Battles brewing in Washington as House Republicans aren't happy with the president. In fact, Republicans are making their first move in starting the formal litigation process against President Obama. Well, today I spoke with Congressman Tim Bishop, not just about this, but the border crisis and the threats of a strike right here in our backyard concerning the contract breakdown between the MTA and the Long Island Railroad workers. Well, I know you're just back from D.C., and before we get to some of the items on the national landscape, closer to home, I know you've been involved in trying to hopefully mitigate here some kind of resolution with the MTA and the union. Are you hopeful there's going to be a deal done here now that they know Congress won't step in before next Sunday?
I'm very hopeful. I thought what happened yesterday was productive, not as productive as it needs to be, but I think the fact that they spent 5 hours at the table, the union made a substantive counterproposal that the MTA is considering. I think that's all positive. What I must say I am discouraged by, troubled by, is that there is no other session scheduled yet to carry forward. And I and several of my colleagues from Long Island have just called upon the MTA and the unions to stay at the table throughout the weekend and negotiate a contract. And if they've got to stay there 24/7 between now and Saturday the 19th, then that's what they got to do.
And there's no exaggeration of the dislocation of so many people, especially from your district and throughout the island, that they'd be looking at come the 20th. Okay, let me talk to you, ask you rather, about in Washington where we are, and more specifically with the back and forth on the subject of immigration. First off, the optics of it, then we'll get to the substance of it. If the president asked you your opinion, would you have told him either don't go to Texas and do the fundraisers, or if you're there, go to the border? Should the president have handled this differently? Because it's not just Republicans that have criticized his handling of it to this point.
In my opinion, the president should have, while he was in Texas, should have gone to the border. That is just my opinion. But I think optics are important, and I think the president visiting the border would have demonstrated to the people of Texas and to the people of the American people that this is a crisis that he is fully immersed in and is determined to solve.
Because it's a midterm year, and lately just because it's Washington, obviously all the fingers are getting pointed in all the directions, but Speaker Boehner made it pretty clear he believes this is the president's problem, saying in part, this is a problem of the president's own making. He's been president for 5.5 years. When is he going to take responsibility for something? Without digging too deep, can we just explain to the audience that basically the legislation that made a distinction between Mexicans who cross the border and people from Honduras, Salvador, and some of the countries south of that happened under the last administration, and people have been trying for a while here to actually get at the table with immigration reform, and a lot of the same folks criticizing today are the same ones who don't want to even have a dialogue on it.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much framed it quite accurately. Let me say a couple things. Number one, I think the Speaker Boehner comment represents the height of hypocrisy. The Senate passed comprehensive immigration reform in June of 2013. Speaker Boehner has pronounced that bill dead on arrival, quote unquote, and has refused to bring any, and I mean any, legislation to the floor that would deal in any way, shape, manner, or form with fixing a problem that all of us agree needs to be fixed. Now, going back to the larger issue of the humanitarian crisis that is on the border right now, you are quite right to point out that the law that is being followed right now, and in fact the law that is being used by some as a lure to get these kids to come to the United States with the illusion that they'll be able to stay here, is a law that was passed in 2008, passed by what's called unanimous consent in the Senate, in other words, everyone agreed, and passed by voice vote in the House, in other words, everyone agreed, and it was signed into law by President Bush. The law says that kids who come into this country unaccompanied by an adult from countries other than Mexico or Canada are entitled to a deportation hearing before they can be deported. That's what's happening right now. And the reason the president has asked for $3.7 billion is to both harden the border, which is crucial, to house and feed these kids, which is, I think, our humanitarian obligation, but importantly, to bring more resources to the border in terms of immigration judges and others to process this vast number of kids who are showing up.
At the end of the day, does the House approve the funding?
I think we have to. Now, clearly, it's not going to be approved in the form in which the president requested it. But look, this is a crisis that requires a response, and that response is going to cost money.
Listen, we've always heard people talking about impeaching the president, but it's not just the Sarah Palins and the fringe who are saying it. You've got a lot of people. We're not talking about suing the president, including, again, the speaker who says that he's basically rewriting the law to fit his own needs. He's making laws on his own here. He's taking executive power and basically using it on steroids. Talk about a lawsuit right now, and really the idea, and I think I speak for a lot of people, that we're just resigned that Washington can't get anything done because it's so flippin' polarized.
The Speaker's lawsuit is a political stunt, and frankly, the American people deserve better. They sent us to Washington to solve problems. They didn't send us to Washington to engage in the kind of gridlock and the kind of dysfunction and the kind of paralysis that we've had in the House of Representatives under Speaker Boehner's leadership. That's simply a fact. There are any number of problems that require congressional action to solve. We need to do the work that the American people sent us to Congress to do, and Speaker Boehner is refusing to do that, and he's spending his time suing the president. I think it's an outrage.
All right. We'll break this into a couple of parts. We're going to talk about this more after the break here, but do you sense just overall there's a fatigue in that people are tired? They're tired of the fighting in Washington. This president seems to be tired of not really getting many things through right now. There seems to be the electorate is just tired of the fighting without any hope that there's resolution. I mean, we talk about important issues. I want to talk about immigration more at length and all that, but just on a broader level, don't you get the sense that people are just exhausted, just about the wasted noise?
Well, I think there's a lot of different people, and I think you're lumping them into one thing. I don't think that there are a lot of people who are not particularly engaged in the detail of politics and policy, who are tired of it and feel frustrated. And the worse than that is that they're very alienated from the belief that anyone can make a difference. There's partisan people who are not tired, right-wingers and Democrats and people who are energized and mad and want to make change, you know, whether it's the result of the Hobby Lobby decision, it's some of the right-wingers after some of the other stuff. There are people who are highly charged up. Don't leave them off.
I wasn't going to waste the question because I knew what the answer was. He's running for re-election, Congressman Bishop is, but part of me really wished, you know, over a beer, he'd say, is it really worth it? You go there every day. You know what's going to happen on any signature issue. You're probably never going to get to have a vote on stuff. I mean, think about it. How long have we been talking about immigration reform without any movement on this? Does there get to be a point we said there's better things I can do with my life than just keep hitting my head against the wall? I mean, that's silliness. We're talking about lawsuits and impeachment where we know it's not going to go anywhere. And so many critical things are facing this country. And I don't know. This isn't new. We've had fights in Washington, but I don't remember the gridlock as bad as this. And I made fun of you as being cynical before. Mm-hmm. Are you rosy optimist here that change's right around the corner?
No, absolutely not. But I also recognize the danger in being too cynical about it. It's a concerted strategy, at least in my opinion, by Republicans, that they're losing on the ideas, so they're going to grind the whole process to a halt and cause this frustration because maybe they can win that way. If it's a pox on everybody's house, then maybe people vote for change and they'll vote for a Republican Senate or they'll vote for a Republican president. And those ideas are so diametrically opposite from what President Obama wants to do and what Democrats want to do. And so I think they're looking to win by playing the prevent defense to a certain degree. It's frustrating to watch, it's frustrating to be a part of, but that's not, you know, if we let our frustrations overtake us, the result.
I'm with you, but I do remember when Chris Chase was here, and again, let's be clear, Chris ran and ran. He wanted to win. It didn't work out at the end, but even he has acknowledged many times with us on the show that Washington is a place where good ideas die too often, and it's just the idea of compromise is a dirty word right now. And I just worry that when you ask people who don't follow it, like the four of us, that they're just like, what's the point? And I know that's what you said, the very danger of it, Dominic. But it's just, I mean, it just turns me off every time I see the waste of energy on stuff that nobody thinks for a second in their honest souls will go anywhere, like this stupid lawsuit and like the impeachments and the rest of the world that we have to waste airtime just talking about because this is the driving news of the day in Washington.
Well, I'd like to return to your original question and answer it. Yes, there's a tremendous fatigue factor, and it starts at the top with President Obama. And it goes to Andrew's point, you can call it prevent, defense, or whatever, but he's 1,000% accurate. If you're not going to win on the ideas, they have effectively won. The battle is over. The Republicans have won. Make no mistake about that. Obama looks like a pure lame duck president where Americans are counting the days till he's gone. And it's rather tragic because the ideas may be on his side, but the Republicans have muddied him up so badly where it looks like he's causing the gridlock or he's so detached that it's him that's not willing to work with the Republicans.
All right, I want to pick it up on that point right after the break, and we're going to talk about what, if anything, even the non-cynics of us at the table, could we realistically expect in the next 2 years that he has left here? And what should we, the people here, if anything, get invested in to try and make this maybe a little bit better than the bleak picture I painted? We'll be right back with that after this.